Hello. Hi. Well, you might not know me. I'm Sally's friend, or AKA, mostly known as Jezebel. I am 15. Well, most of you probably want to hear my story. Well, instead of having some random impersonator tell my story, I'll tell you myself. Well, from another person's view, because I know what they're thinking. Jezebel was always walking, always standing outside waiting for someone. She looked like she was always... Well, she was always that weird girl walking across the street. I don't understand. What? She had no things to do. I don't know what she did every time she went outside. She was always either grabbing her teddy bear or just dancing or doing something weird. That's why I didn't really like her. She never talked to anyone else. Until that one night, when I guess her mother had told her to come to my home. I don't know why, but she came in and smiled at me. I looked at her and kind of scared. She was a little scary. She just smiled and but all that was said was, "My mother needs you. Call your mother, because my mom is now sick." Of course I called my mom. She looked at me weirdly, because when she checked out the door, she was gone. She just disappeared. I kept telling my mom she was standing right there. That night my mom thought I was lying to her. She hates when I lie. So she told me to go to bed. So of course it was 6 o'clock. Yeah. I didn't go to bed though. I just stayed up watching TV. When my mom came in and turned off the TV and a little bit yelled at me, I heard a little girl's voice going, "Go to sleep, sleep tight, see you in the morning light, see you in if you stay awake." And I got a little scared, so I turned around and looked around. It was dark, so I couldn't see. It kind of scared me, but I was too tired to call my mom. My mom, it kept happening. Stay awake. But then I fell asleep. That morning, I heard a scream. It sounded like it came from my mom's room. I, of course, being the child that I was, ran into her room to find my father. Such a man. He was so evil to my mom. I never liked him. He slapped my mom across the face I don't know why. But when I walked in the room, he smirked. He said what my mom had told him. He yelled at me, of course, but didn't hit me. He's already been in trouble for that. That night, I didn't get to bed that often. That week, I kind of was shaky, and my mom was never even talked that much. I always got sad when my mom didn't talk to me. Yeah, it was always like, "Are you okay, Mom?" But she never just answered. She just said, "It's okay." I kind of smiled at her and walked out of my room to see the girl standing right in front of my door. She smiled and said, "Wanna go play? Let's go play." He dragged me along. I tried to scream, but I couldn't. I just looked at her, and her eyes were wide open. She took me to my room and, of course, spilled out my toys. I kind of looked at her in dismay and said, "Hey, don't touch those." She turned around and cracked her neck. "What?" she said, as she said, going like this with her head. I looked at her and almost ran out the door, but the door closed suddenly. I saw this little ball thing rolling and just hit the door. It almost hit me, so I screamed. My mom was in the living room, not listening. She probably thought I was just playing with myself. I tried to tell the girl, "Leave me alone," but she wouldn't. She just smiled and looked at me. "So, what do you want to play?" she finally said. I looked at her and almost gasped. Her face just went all the way, just her eyes. The only thing I can remember, her eyes were just dead on me. I looked at her and I gave out a yelp. She smiled as if I hadn't said anything. "So," I said, "what are we going to play?" Her voice got a little higher. I don't know. I yelled back. She smiled. She seemed like she had something in mind, but wasn't saying anything. So I said, "What do you have in mind?" She just smiled and said, "That's for later." I didn't know what's going on, so I walked to the door and tried to open it. It was budged. I screamed for my mom, and my mom eventually walked in the room. I told her what had happened and pointed to the place where the girl was. Of course, the girl had disappeared again, and my mom had yelled at me for lying again and dumping out all my toys. That night, I just thought. Later at night, I saw a shining glow from my window. I walked over and saw the girl's face just smiling at me and saying, "You ended our play date. That's so rude. Come on, let's play." Again. Again, she had cracked her head and turned around and looked at me. I looked at her and screamed. I just jumped out of my room to find her standing in the hallway between me and my mom's room. I screamed for my mom, and my mom walked out. She said, "Stop screaming," and looked around. She saw the light coming from my room and said, "Come on, come sleep with me and your father for a sec." I slept really nice that night. But when I woke up, my mom wasn't there or my dad. I got up and decided to go make myself breakfast until I saw the girl standing there and sitting. I think she was sitting. I don't remember. She was just sitting there and smiling so faintly and said, "You left me. You left me." And it seemed that she was getting louder and louder and louder. I asked where my parents were. She smiled and said, "Somewhere." I, of course, ran off to look for them. As I walked into the bathroom, I found my mom laying there, just dead. Blood splattered out. It had been appeared that her eyes were gashed out, and her face was just all cut out. As I looked at the girl. She seemed to be morphing into something. Her smile got more devious. I looked at her and almost screamed. There was a big gash in her cut, a gash in her mouth. It was like smiling. Her eyes were like deep black. Her eyes were just getting whiter and whiter on the corners. Then black stuff was smearing down her eyes. I, of course, screamed and tried to run, but she said, "Time's up. Time for dying." And I screamed. I didn't know what to do. I busted the window open and ran. Of course, my neighbor was awake, and she asked me what was going on. She was the oldest of the street. I told her what's going on, and she told me to come in her house. She said, "You're probably just imagining things." Until she saw I took her to the window to my bathroom, and she screamed, "Chad, we need to get you, and we need to call the police." As she got out her phone, she dropped it, and, well, I screamed and grabbed her phone. I called 911. I was only 9 at the time, so I pretty much knew 911. I called them and said everything had happened. They said, the lady just said, "Hold on, we will be there in a second." As the police came, they saw me crying there behind my house. They said what had happened, and I told them everything. They had looked in my house to find a little girl sitting there on the chair, saying, She told, I must kill." The police lady took me to the deputy's office just to help me. On the news, when the guy had came back, he had said that they had killed her. They had took her in and killed her for her crimes that she had committed. But then, on the news had flashed alleged dead girl. Body not found anymore. The deputy looked at me and looked back at his girlfriend or wife, I don't know. I got scared. He said that I'll be staying here for a while. I got a little scared and just freaked out. As I had said, the body was disappeared. That night, I kept thinking of what she had said to me. She said, "Time for dying." I didn't know what she was meaning. I started to get anxious and eventually vomited. I got so scared. The deputy walked into my room and said, "Are you okay?" I just looked up and I just kept seeing her face in his. I screamed at him, and he looked at me very weirdly. He said, "What's wrong, child?" I said, "It's time for play," and twisted his whole head around. Eventually, the girl's head, body, and everything had morphed into his. I screamed and tried to run, but she wouldn't let me go. Her grasp was just staring at me. Her eyes were just bulging. I didn't know what to do, and more black stuff had gone down her eyes. I just screamed and just stood there. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I could have ran. Why didn't I? I kept thinking to myself. Why didn't I run? Until the lady walked in my room and the girl disappeared. She said, "What's wrong?" And she saw me crying there. She took me to their room. That night, I didn't go to sleep. When I woke up that morning, the lady had made me breakfast. I was very happy, yet scared. What if the girl had killed me that night? What if I was alive? I started crying, I don't know why, but then I walked outside. I thought, maybe if I took a walk. I always did this with Mom. I just smiled and kept walking down the street until I saw this gang of kids. They were just utterly staring at me. I thought I would turn back until they came closer to me. I tried to turn back when one of them, the biggest one, he said, "Give me your money." I said I had none. I really did. He said, "Do you know who I am?" I looked at him and said, "No." He said, "I am Ronald." I looked at him and kind of nodded. "Okay, hi. I'm Remy." He looked at me and laughed. "What kind of name is that? That's the ugliest name I've ever heard. Who listens to that? What are you?" I looked at him and said, "I've been through whatever. You shut up." He looked at me and laughed. "What do you think? I'm not going to hit a girl, but I have a girl to hit you." This big, tall girl had walked from behind her. He had yelled out "dice," and she looked at evilly. "Hey, child." She eventually slapped me across my face and I dropped. I didn't know what to do. I screamed. But then the girl just screamed at my face and ran. She just dropped and all her friends ran. I really was scared. I was like, "What?" I yelled, "What?" She had said she just saw a little girl just walking. I was like, "Why are you screaming then?" But then I thought, oh God. I got up and picked her up, and then she ran. I don't know what she had saw in my face, but she said, "Your face is ugly!" And ran. I don't know what happened, but I just dropped to the ground. It had started raining, so I thought I would just walk back. That night, I just got scared. I wouldn't do anything. I didn't touch my food. I didn't touch anything that night. I just thought about my family. Of course, I had a little sister that was at camp, and I was hoping she would never come back because she would have to be the horror of her family had been killed. She was 4. I was 9. It was just so scary. I don't know what I did, but I just... I don't know what I did, but that night I just thought, why didn't I look for the little girl? I had called what I thought her name was. I thought it was Jezabel, so I just said, "Jezabel!" And of course, right on my time, when I was closing my door, she appeared. "You called me?" She smiled. She had a knife. I don't know why. Hello. 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 So, I said, "I'm Jezabel." She said, she grabbed her knife out and got on top of me. I screamed. The lady didn't come in. She said, "No one's here to save you. You're gonna die now." She started, I don't know what happened, but she kept disappearing and going. And all she was saying was, "Toby, come on, Toby." And of course a boy came in. He had a hatchet. I screamed. I didn't know what to do. He had on a helmet, and I tried to kick him where the sun don't shine. He said, "Oh, this one's feisty." Well, Slendy said not to leave crap around, so come on, hurry up, Jezabel. Just kill her already. She had looked at me in my eyes and said, "Ready? Begin." She stabbed me in my arm. I screamed, "Stop!" I started crying and didn't think what to do. I looked around and the boy was just staring there and laughing. He started twitching. I got scared. Was that where the girl got her twitching from? She had twisted her head all around by now. and had stabbed me in my eye. I screamed, and I didn't know what to do. My eye was bleeding in my eye. She had stabbed me in my arm. I was screaming so hard until she gashed me in my face and cut up a smile. You're dead now, you're dead now. Smile! That was all I remember. I never would have thought I would get out that way. Well, that was mine.
Well, that's Jesabel's story. Well, that's from the person's point of view. I didn't give my point of view. How I died, how everything happened. Well, I'll do that later. Peace from Jesabel. And thank Toby and Alexis and my mother for doing this for me. If you're wondering who Toby is, he's my brother. So, if you mess with Toby Rogers, Aaron Waddles. He's not my real brother, but I call him my brother because since I've been dead, I call him my big brother. I'm younger than him. Yeah, so.